You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left, in front, happy moment, the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup! And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup! Lightning strikes twice! The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup!
Hello everybody and welcome to RBLR Lightning. My name, as of course, as always, is Jake Yurika, and alongside me is my good friend, my co-host, my line mate, Yurika Wheeler. Yurika, we've got a lot to talk about this show. There's a lot going on, a lot of news, a lot of games to recap, but how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to talk Style Watch. I'm excited to talk some player movement. I'm excited to talk a milestone victory for this franchise, and all of that happened in the last 7 days. So amazing.
It's been a busy week, hasn't it? Well, let's jump right into that news, and we'll start with, I think, some of the most exciting of the news front, and that the Lightning finally released their Stadium Series jerseys for the upcoming game against the Nashville Predators. The Lightning going outdoors. They've released their new jerseys, and I've got to say, Yurika, I quite like them.
Yeah, a little homage, I guess, at the bottom to those old school ugly, quote unquote ugly Storm jerseys that we had in our first year. Just that little like lightning bolt that also sort of looks like a storm the sea sturge, but a really good, aggressive, big font on the front of it. Just a lot of motion, a lot of movement, a lot of just angular design. It was really good. And while it's not my favorite jersey that we ever have, it's 10,000 times better than our opponents.
That is absolutely right. So for those who haven't seen it, they went back with the Bolt style jersey, which this is now the third Bolts jersey that the Lightning have in their collection. I know a lot of people aren't big fans of the Bolts jerseys, but these I really do like. And they, as you mentioned, they really went and did this, kind of a big look at me kind of theme, which we've seen with a lot of the Stadium Series jerseys in previous seasons. But they also have the top of the lightning bolt on the B and the end of the lightning bolt on the S. So it's almost like there's a lightning bolt going through the bolts, which I think is really well done. And at the bottom, there's the oversized lightning bolt that you can make out at the bottom. So I think they did a really good job with these jerseys. I personally really like them. I know from some of the polls I saw around on Twitter that most people either like them or are just okay with them. There's not many people that are very much against them. And as you mentioned, though, there was a lot of people that weren't fan of the Nashville jerseys, and they're not great. Nashville really took a leap of faith there and tried to go with something very different. Their jerseys they've got like the different size lettering, which I know is driving a lot of people nuts. And then even the lettering's like too big in the one section of color that they have. And then they got the guitar pick logo just sitting in the middle of the words. It's a very interesting jersey. I encourage everybody, if you haven't seen them, go check them out online to see for yourself. But I'm happy with what the Lightning did overall. I think they did a great job. And I'll tell you what they did a really, really good job on, though, Yurika, was the release video. If you haven't seen that, be sure to go check it out on the Lightning's Twitter. The whole video with Killorn talking to Gronk on FaceTime and then getting a mysterious visit from some cowboy and delivering it to Steven Stamkos, who has got a full cowboy hat suit on and ready to go, is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think Gronk and Killorn kind of have the same energy after watching that video. I'm like, these guys probably get along off the ice,
It was a very fun and entertaining way to release the jersey. So, what exciting stuff. So, I will definitely be trying to get my hands on one of those for sure before the outdoor game approaches. But let's go on. We got a lot more news to talk about here. Victor Hedman was awarded the second star of the week. He had 4 games, had 2 goals, 6 assists, and 8 points. So congrats to Victor Hedman picking up the second star of the week. He had a really good week. I know there's been some times where people have been a little frustrated with Hedman, and I don't think even himself, he knows he hasn't been himself really this season. For Victor Hedman, he's so good that even his average almost looks like he's playing bad, or his good looks like average, I should say. But a very good week for him this week, and getting a second star and getting the recognition he deserves.
Yeah, and it's almost lost that he's coming back from injury, and I think that
right, that's absolutely true.
It might have taken a little bit of time to get to 100%, and who knows if he even is going to get there, but it's definitely good to see the offensive statistics get back to where we're accustomed to with with Heddy.
Well, and then we had some interesting news coming out this morning, actually. So we saw the Lightning make a couple of roster moves. They had recalled left-handed defenseman Frederick Claesson back up. That's probably due to the Eric Cernak injury, which we'll get to when we get more to the game recaps. But then the Lightning also sent forward Alex Pierre-Boulet back down, which might be surprising to some, even though Joseph has just come back. But ABB had been playing pretty decent so far this when he came back with the Lightning, I thought. But then just a couple hours ago, actually, as of this recording, the Lightning claimed center Riley Nash off of waivers from Winnipeg, which is something I did not expect the Lightning to do today.
Yeah, where do you see Riley Nash fitting into this particular lineup? I mean, I mentioned off air, I think he's more of a defensive player, and do the Lightning need more defense, or, with the power play and with everything, it was offense the way to go? Where does he fit in on this roster?
Yeah, so it's interesting because he's definitely not an offensive player. He's played in 15 games this season with the Winnipeg Jets, has not scored a goal. So he's much better on the defensive side of things, even though in 15 games played, it was only a -1. So that tells you how good defensively he is. But I think the main point of this for the Lightning was that they don't necessarily need defensive help because they've been pretty decent defensively. Although if you look at the third period, maybe not. So maybe that's what this really is all about. But he'll probably slot into where ABB would have been in the lineup. I don't know exactly where he's going to be. You still have Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point out. So it really is interesting because you look at the lineup, Joseph is back, so he's not going to come out. And the way the rookies have been playing, and Taylor Radish, Tkachuk, and Fortier as well, they've all been playing pretty good. So I think for the time being, while we still have Kuch and Point out, I could see Nash taking over for Fortier maybe for a couple of games to get him some action, because I believe Nash does have to play a game in the NHL because the Lightning cleaned him off waivers. I believe that's how that works. But I think the main point of this was depth. Because you look at teams like the Blues right now, they are in a tough situation with some injuries and COVID issues where they can't even call anybody up right now because they're so close to the cap and they've had to deal with some injuries. The Lightning are looking to trying to avoid that, I believe, which is why they went ahead and claimed Nash off waivers. I don't know that for sure, but that's my best guess at this because, to be honest, the Lightning really don't need Riley Nash, and he'll more than likely be sent down to the crunch as soon as everybody gets healthy. Now, maybe Riley Nash gets back to his 2017 old self where he had 40 points with Boston Bruins, and he becomes a staple of this lineup. Who knows? But I see this as a purely depth signing for the Lightning right now.
Yeah, do you think they're going to fit him into one of the bottom six lines that they're I think Cooper's keeping those intact. We've seen, ABB and Fortier kind of put on like the Stammer line and the Killorn line, but the bottom six playing pretty well. Maroon, Belmar, Perry, Ketchuk, and the kid line at the fourth line is just gelling really, really well. Do you think there's room on those first two lines for Nash?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think I would be surprised to see him go on the bottom six. I expect him to go up in that top six area, playing with like a Steven Stamkos or Andre Palat, as you mentioned earlier. The player I expect him to go out for is Fortier, who's currently, I believe, playing on the Killorn Sorelli line, if I'm not mistaken.
That's where I am,
But with ABB out as well, that changes some things up. I don't see Joseph playing on the Stamkos line. I don't think he usually does. So it'll be interesting to see what Cooper does here in the next couple of days. And, this is also something you kind of have to see is what line does Nash play the best on? It's things you have to experiment with chemistry, which the Lightning did early on in the season. And a part of the reason they struggled so early in the season because they had a lot of new guys that they had to find their best lines. But as you mentioned, the kid line and then the bus line, if you will, with Maroon, Bellemare, and Perry, Tkachuk, Colton, and Radish for the kid line, they've been playing very well as of late. So there is no reason to break up that chemistry right now. So if anything, I believe we'll see Nash in the top 6 somewhere, not because he is a top 6 player, but that's just where he'll fit best on this team.
Yeah. Well, and if you're overloading with offense anyway, with a Palat Stamkos line, or even Killorn and Cirelli is doing really well. He's on fire right now, and so maybe you add a little bit of beef to that line. Yeah, who knows?
Absolutely, and if he can help out with the third period defense as well, I am all for it because it has still been an issue for the Lightning. Let's talk about some of these games that we've had in the last week. So the first one we got to talk about is the St. Louis Blues game that took place right after our last podcast of recording. And, well, Yurika, we talked about how the Lightning had finally gotten away from shootout and overtime games, and then the Lightning went right back to the shootout as they are very much too soon. They would lose this one in the shootout to the Blues by a final score of 4-3, but that wasn't the big talking point of this game. It was that the Lightning had a 3-goal lead after the first period, and the Blues would come back to tie the game by the end of the third period and then ultimately win it in the shootout. Now, the Lightning were obviously without Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point as they're still injured, but they were also without Steven Stamkos. And this was not due to injury, but because he went back to Tampa to be with his wife as she was expecting their second child. So big congratulations to Steven Stamkos. As he gets to be a dad number 2 now with his second child. So good for him, but unfortunate for the Lightning as they were now having to go 11-7. But it looked like it wasn't going to be a big issue for the Lightning as they led 3-0 in this period. They played really good. They had Anthony Cirelli scoring early in the game. Then you had Corey Perry, who has seemed like he's broken the dam wide open, been playing really well as of late. And then Eric Chernak just 5 seconds later scores one of the most ridiculous goals I've ever seen, where he shoots it off the side of the glass and it somehow bounces inside of the net, which was a franchise record, by the way, 5 seconds apart, fastest 2 goals for the Tampa Bay Lightning of any 2 goals apart. But then the collapse happened, where the Blues come back. They score 2 in the second period. They get 1 more in the third to tie the game. And that last goal in the third period came with just minute 11 left in that period, I believe. It was a late goal. It's just, you sit there and say, how do you go up 3-0 early and then just take your foot off the gas completely? It was kind of baffling and very frustrating to a lot of Lightning fans.
Yeah, it's insane because that Cirelli, Perry, and Chernak all score the first 6 minutes of the game. And so the downside of that is there's so much more hockey to play. And St. Louis was able to chip away at that lead. Tampa Bay, we sat back a little bit, and I think it's also important to mention Elliott was in net, and I think Elliott did very good. I mean, considering the way that the play changed with St. Louis, just having to go kind of into overdrive to make up a 3-goal deficit, and so what you saw over the course of the next 44 minutes is that we saw that lead evaporate. But, how did you feel about Elliott in goal, I guess would be my first question. He made 30 saves on 33 shots, so they're firing the puck at Elliott. But even though it did end up going to a shootout, I think that Elliott, that takes away from how good Elliott played in this game.
You're 100% right. Elliott played very well in this game. If it wasn't for him, this game could have ended in regulation, honestly. Now, obviously, the other goalie the Lightning have is Andrei Vasilevsky, so it's hard to say that. But my point being is Elliott did play very well in this game. He made some fantastic saves, especially late in the game. He was very, very good. And I believe he only let in 1 goal during the shootout as well. Yep. It was to Ryan O'Reilly. So he even played well in the shootout, but the Lightning just couldn't get anything done. The interesting fact about the shootout, too, the Lightning were without three of their best shooters in the shootout when it came to Braden Point and Steven Stamkos. So Elliott played fantastic in this game. And, you know, you look at when the Lightning controlled the game in the first period, Elliott didn't let in any goals. It wasn't until when the Lightning started to make mistakes and left guys wide open that Elliott couldn't stop those kinds of shots, which you can't blame him for. So the big thing in this game was the collapse in the second and third period. But the one thing I will say is I know a lot of Lightning fans were very frustrated from this game. If I would have told you going into this game that the Lightning were going to lose in overtime, but they didn't have Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Steven Stamkos, Andrei Vasilevsky was not in net for this game, I guarantee you any Lightning fan would have gladly taken the 1 point. But the frustrating things for fans was that they had a 3-goal lead. But if you take that out of the equation, it doesn't seem as all bad. It's definitely an issue for the Lightning. You cannot do something like that no matter who's out there on the ice. When you have a 3-goal lead, you should be able to hold down the fort and win that game. But then again, you look at other games around the league that happened that day. The Florida Panthers came back from down 3 goals. Washington blew a 3-goal lead, and they didn't even get a point out of those games as well. So the fact that the Lightning at least got a point out of this was still a positive, but still very frustrating that they blew the 3-goal lead.
Well, if we're looking at silver linings as well, this was Fortier's NHL debut. How did you think the kid did?
He played well. He played with some momentum and some energy. He made a couple of good plays. You know, it wasn't anything that jumped off the page, I don't think, but you know, that's not every player is going to score on their first shift. So I thought he played well. I think he's fit in very well with this team. And he continued to do that in some of these other games as well, which we'll get to in just a second. So good on him for his first NHL game. But
and we had Chernak returning, and he scores 6 minutes into his return. So
yeah,
not too shabby over there.
We're really seeing how important Chernak has been to this team. And he unfortunately suffered another injury. He has been out I don't know when he's coming back or if he'll play tonight or not. I haven't seen. We'll have to wait and see for the line or the pregame to see if he's back in. But Chernak has been so good for the Lightning this year. Good defensively, and he's contributing offensively as well.
Well, and thankfully, we didn't have to wait too long for our revenge as we played them just a couple days later.
Yes, we did.
And, you know, Heddy, I think this is the headline, is Hedman is the man, 2 goals, 1 assist, and I think he really broke the wall down with offensive play in the third period. Overall, the Bolts, to me, looked like they really wanted to flood the net. A ton of close shots in front of the net, but not a lot of success until late in the game. But we saw Palat score in this game. Cirelli scored again on the power play, no less. And that was very quick on the power play, too. On that particular one, the Blues, I don't think, really wanted to be on the penalty kill for very long. But we saw Vasi back in net. What did you see out of the 4-2 win at home against the Blues?
It was a great response. You know, the Lightning had a very frustrating loss, obviously, when they lost to the Blues, blowing that 3-goal lead, and then they came back in this game and made a statement. They said, nope, we're not doing that again. We're the better team, and this is why. And if you look, they played one of their best third periods they have all season. We're going into the third period, you know, you're tied at 1, and you're thinking, oh, no, here we go again. We're not even up this time. But then the Lightning come out, and they score 3 total goals. Victor Hedman ultimately being the one that closes it out, as the Blues had tied it at 2 originally, but then Hedman said, all right, that's enough of that. I'm shutting this down and ending this game. So good on Victor Hedman, too, to get on a little bit of a roll there and finally break through offensively. And he played a good game defensively as well. Andrei Vasilevsky, obviously always stellar as he is. It was good to see the Lightning get a goal on the power play, as that struggled at times for them this season has been still a big issue. Penalty kill actually not great in this game. The Lightning... The Blues went 2 for 4, so that was a little bit of an issue. But then again, Joseph was still hurt at this time as well. And he's been a big part of the penalty kill.
Well, 2 people I think that deserve a little bit of praise here is Bogosian and Sergachev. I think they looked very good in this game. They were attacking, and I think it's good to have your third pairing be very, very solid. So I wanted to shout them out. I think they attacked the line a lot. They attacked the forwards, I should say, a lot, and were able to kind of make things happen in transition. And so that every little piece works well. And if your third defensive pairing is working very well, then that's a win in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. Bogosian did have a good game. It was kind of a bounce back game for him as well because he had taken like 6 penalties in the last 3 games before this, and he did not take a penalty in this game. So that was good for him.
Yeah.
But moving on to the next game that we have to talk about is the start of the road trip for the Lightning. It was the first of a back-to-back for them, and that was against the Boston Bruins, a big rival for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We talked about on the show last time that this is always a game to keep your eye on because it's against the Boston Bruins, even though they hadn't been playing all too well. You just never know with these types of games because these rivalry games can get out of hand very quickly. But luckily, the Lightning took care of business in this one. It was a close one as they won it in overtime, but the Lightning took home the win 3-2. We got to see Taylor Radish score his first goal of his career, which was really awesome to see. And it was a beautiful goal. Not only was it his first goal, but it was shorthanded as well to give the Lightning an early 1-0 lead. So a big moment for Taylor Radish and a big congratulations to him to finally get that puck in the back of the net because he'd been playing really well before this as well. And then Lightning got a 2-0 lead too from Andre Palat, who scored as well. He's been hot as of late quietly, I think, as well. Palat scoring a couple of goals recently in this past week. But then, again, as we've seen so many times this year, Yurika, is the Lightning let the Bruins get back into it. And actually, I remember saying in our Discord channel was that the Lightning were actually getting outplayed what felt like this entire game. The Bruins were the better team in this game, but somehow the Lightning were leading on the scoreboard and were leading 2-0 earlier in the second period. But then Boston finally was able to crack Andrei Vasilevskiy and come back and ultimately tie this game in the third period. But then luckily for the Lightning, Steven Stamkos in overtime, just a beautiful play where, a lot of players might have tried to pass that puck anyway. He said, nope, I'm going to shoot this one himself, and just absolutely blasted one to end it for Lightning 3-2 in overtime.
His dagger was phenomenal in overtime. I mean, he took it and said, nope, it's my ball. I'm going to take this one all the way home. So
he said game is what he did. He said game, set, match.
Yeah. Well, of course, Radish, amazing to get his first ever NHL goal. It's good to see these young guys come up and contribute. And I know he had one that should have been in, but was credited to someone else. Just took it away from him, and he didn't win it. Didn't get on the score sheet until now. But I think Vasilevskiy was the star here. 37 saves out of 39 shots, because you're absolutely correct. The Bruins, to me, felt like they had the momentum. Even when the Bolts were ahead by 2 goals, it felt like, how did we get here? Because the Bruins, they outshot them, they outhit them, they won more faceoffs. The Lightning gave up the puck more. It was just, and the penalty minutes were even so. By all accounts of this game, the Bruins were the better team, quote unquote, on paper, but. Even Cooper said that in the postgame. He says, quote, in an 82-game league, it's hard to play your best, and sometimes you have stinkers. That's exactly right. I mean, this was a stinker for the Bolts, but, you should beat teams that are below you in the standings, and that's what we thought going into this, and that's what they pulled it out. Of course, it had to happen in overtime, but because of Vasilevskiy, I think that's why we saw this turn into a victory, because of our Hall of Famers, because of Stammer, and because of Vasilevskiy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And what makes this team so good is that, as you mentioned, like Cooper said, 82 games, you're going to have these bad games. But yet, even though that happened, the Lightning still pulled out the victory, which, as frustrating as these games can get, at the end of the day, if you're able to hold on to the win, that's all that matters. It's just that, look at the playoffs, it doesn't matter how the heck you get there, but as long as you keep winning games, then nothing else matters. So good for the Lightning to pull that one out and get the win. I'm sure that was an extremely frustrating game for any Bruins fan watching that, as they were clearly outplaying the Lightning, and they just were behind almost the whole time until they finally tied it, and then Stamkos ended it in overtime. But I'm not too all upset for Bruins fans because they are Bruins fans, so I don't know.
Well, it was just
a little bit of shade.
It was just good as a Tampa Bay fan to finally see us on the victor side of a very close game. You know, the Rowdies were kind of in the same position where they were the better team through their championship final game and just couldn't get it going, and then saw the other team put goals in the net. So it's just like it's not the same, but at least we won this one, and a win is a win whether you win 1-0 or by a lot to a little, as we saw in the next game.
Absolutely. But let's move on to the next game in the second half of the back-to-back for the Lightning, where it was a completely different tale this time around, Yurika, as the Lightning absolutely dominated in the Philadelphia Flyers game. They would win it ultimately by a score of 7-1. Yes, you heard that correctly. 7-1 was the score. So a touchdown. Lightning took out a page out of the Bucks book and scored a touchdown with the extra point as well. Ryan McDonough, Corey Perry, Taylor Radish getting in on the action, scoring his second goal. Boris Tkachuk scoring his first goal of his career. Matthew Joseph, he scored shorthanded. Finally, Matthew Joseph, after all those shorthanded chances, finally got one in the back of the net. Pat Maroon, and then Corey Perry again in this game. All of the goal scorers for the Lightning, and this just from puck drop to the end of the game was just complete domination for the Lightning. I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, this was the 1,000th win for the Lightning in their franchise history. 6 different Bolts get on the board, and Elliott in net has a gem of a game, 38 saves on 39 shots. I think that if we're looking for what do you learn in a 7-1 victory, and I think the first thing is that the Bolts came out a little slow on this road trip in the first period, but eventually scored 2 goals in that period, and it was Elliott, I think, that was the hero of that period. That even with a 2-goal lead, the Flyers didn't give up on this. They really tried to get back into this game, and Elliott, is the reason that they continued to be up by 2 goals going into the intermission. But in the second period, all of the doubt was put away. 3 goals on 9 shots. That is accuracy right there, Jake.
Yes, it is.
And it was also very, very good. I mean, I get it helps to have such a commanding lead. But in the third period, they shut the door. They absolutely did not just wait for the time to expire, give up some super late goals or flurry, or let the other team get back into it. No, they stayed from whistle to whistle. They absolutely played really well, and this was a good opportunity for Hedman to pad his stats with 3 assists. Corey Perry had 2 goals and assist, and we had another first. We had Tkachuk scoring his first NHL goal. It's like, however you want to slice it, this was ultimate domination by the defending Stanley Cup champions, and that's exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, I almost feel a little bit bad for the Flyers, who have been having a very tough stretch recently, and the Lightning did not make things any easier for them. They actually went and fired their coach after this game as well. So this was the nail in the coffin for the Flyers, and the Lightning took it to them. But still, a couple more things in this game. You mentioned Brian Elliott. I've got to say, too, we haven't been doing 3 stars recently, but huge shout out to Elliott this week. I think he's played really, really well. Even in the games that he's ultimately lost, he's played very well, made some great saves. I've been really impressed with him. I think he's really coming into his own here as a Bolt. So I really love what he does, and he showed up big against his former team to help the Lightning pick up their 1,000th franchise win, which is awesome, by the way. I didn't even know the Lightning were that close to that. They become the 24th franchise, by the way, in the NHL to pick up their 1,000th win. So pretty exciting things there. One funny thing that came out of this game, too, is when we saw Tkachuk finally score his first goal. He didn't seem all too that excited. It took his teammates a couple minutes to get a chuckle out of him, but I think he was just relieved to finally get on the board after so many chances. But just so much good from this game. It was a fun one to be a Lightning fan this time around.
Yeah. Well, as we look to the future, I kind of want to ask you, how do you feel? The power play, we saw a little bit more success this week, and Cirelli definitely a big chunk of that, scoring a power play goal. how are you feeling now? I think we're at the quarter mark. Last week we might not have been so much, but I think we're solidly at the quarter mark of the season. What do you think the Bolts need to improve the most? Is it just injuries and we're waiting to see how the team looks, or are there noticeable things that the team needs to improve?
Well, there's a couple of things, and they kind of have to do with some of the injuries as well. So it's you take it with a grain of salt, but the third period still hasn't been great. There have been a couple of games where they've played well, like the Philadelphia game.
Yep.
But then that St. Louis and the Boston game, well, the first St. Louis game anyway, was not great. So they've been kind of hit or miss with the third period as of late. It's good to see that they're at least showing improvement there, but that's something you'd still like to see be ironed out and become more consistent, where they can shut those games down when they have the lead, like they did against Philadelphia. And then the power play has still been an issue for the Lightning. But the big thing there is I can't even be too hard on them, especially right now, is because they're without Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point, who are two huge parts of that power play and why it's usually so good as it is. So anytime you take out two superstars like that, your power play is going to suffer. So those are the two major things. One of them can easily be fixed when players come back healthy. The other one is just getting back to basics, I guess, and working on the practice side of things. But for the most part, the Lightning have been really good this season. They had that tough start at the beginning, but they've started to finally come into their own. They're winning lots of games. They're picking up points even when they're losing games. I think they're looking pretty good for the defending Stanley Cup champions right now, I would say.
Now, I know we're still, over 3 months away from the trade deadline, but with them, picking up Nash, and maybe that's a little unexpected, but we'll see how that fits. Are there any other moves that that you think the team is looking at, saying like, if something doesn't change, or if we do need a little bit more firepower, is there a move you think they're thinking of making?
Yeah, well, obviously with the Lightning being up as much against the cap as they have been for the last couple of years, as many fans have not let us forget, but it'll be tough to make moves. I doubt you see any big splashes that the Lightning go after and do, but then again, we never know. If anything, again, those two things I mentioned earlier with the power play and the third period, maybe the Lightning go out and make a move for a depth defenseman, kind of like they did with Savard. I don't want to say Savard was a depth defenseman, but Savard came in and was a solid bottom six kind of defenseman for the Lightning. It's just because of how many good guys that we had at the time and still do. That was kind of his role that he took on with the Lightning. So maybe they do something similar to that. I could also very easily see them going to get someone for the power play if it's still struggling by the time Kucherov and Braden Point come back. I think even that second unit, even when Kuch or Point are back, is usually still an issue. So that's one thing I would not mind seeing the Lightning do, is going in and get someone that can help out on the power play, especially on that second unit, because it still has been an issue for the Lightning.
Well, we're still in the middle of this East Coast Canadian road trip that we're on, and 3 big games in Canada this week, starting with tonight's matchup against the Montreal Canadiens, then going to Toronto a couple days later, going to Ottawa on Saturday, and then finally having a couple days off before they come home and play next Tuesday. When we talk, we'll be getting ready to preview that game. So what do you think the Bolts are going to accomplish on their next 3 games in Canada?
Well, I hope it's 3 wins is what I hope to. But tonight we have the Stanley Cup rematch taking on the Montreal Canadiens. Although the Montreal Canadiens have not been the Montreal Canadiens of last season. They have been struggling a lot, and then a lot of that is due to obviously not having guys like Carey Price, who is taking the year off due to mental health reasons, and I still don't believe Jonathan Druid is back, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So the Canadiens are not who they used to be, but it is still a Stanley Cup rematch, so the Lightning should take care of business, I would imagine, against the Canadiens, but we shall see. Then you got the Toronto Maple Leafs coming up, which that's a big game, and I look to this week is because last time the Lightning played the Maple Leafs, they were playing really well against them, and then they had that third period issue that we've talked about for a while now, and the Leafs ended up coming back and winning that game in overtime. So that's going to be one to keep your eye on, because Toronto's a very good team. They've been playing really good again in the regular season here. Yep. So that's going to be a tough game, and I would hope that the Lightning are going to want a little bit of revenge like they did against St. Louis, and make sure they get a big win in that game. And then you have the Ottawa Senators, who are another team that have struggled this year, and on paper the Lightning should take care of very easily. Maybe kind of a Philadelphia Flyers-like game, if you will. But then again, these are NHL teams, and you just never know. You can't count anybody out, especially in the NHL. I mean, heck, look at the Seattle Kraken, who have been on a roll as of late in beating some of the best teams in the NHL. So
Ottawa's not that far behind. They've won their last 3, so we'll see what happens in a couple days. But
correct,
they're on a roll too.
They've been good, so you never know. But on paper, easily Montreal and Ottawa, those are 2 games Lightning should take home the victory. And Toronto's the toughest one for sure, but I would expect Lightning to come out and play really well. They've been playing really good as of late as well, so Lightning are on a roll.
Yeah, before we get out of here, I did want to say one more thing. Something that's new that we haven't really brought up on the podcast a lot is that we just launched our little t-shirt shop. It's a way that you can support us here. Of course, liking and subscribing is absolutely free, and I mean, obviously, that's the first step. If you want to do something to help us, that helps us out immensely. But if you do want to take it a little bit further, if you do want to help us out with a couple dollars in your pocket, head over to shop.rblrsports.com. There is a link in the description of this podcast, and we have a lot of designs in the colors of our beloved teams. So take a look around, and if you happen to like something there, it helps us out a little bit to pay for server costs and pay for all the little things to keep us running. So if you use the promo code BOLTS, BOLTS, you will get 10% off your order. So if you use promo code BOLTS at checkout at shop.rblrsports.com, you will get 10% off your order. So
Christmas time too, right around the corner. Perfect time to be doing some Christmas shopping for any kind of Tampa sports fans in your life as well, right?
Oh yeah.
And there's some really cool designs on there. I went and checked it out myself. I'm gonna have to pick up some of my own as well. There's some awesome stuff on there, so highly recommend going to check that out.
We're trying to make cool stuff, so I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
But I think, Yurika, that's all we got for today. And then obviously we'll be back for the next podcast on Tuesday when they take on the LA Kings. Is there anything else that I missed from this week?
No, happy birthday to the Lightning. They celebrated their franchise birthday.
Yes.
I think we haven't said that. Maybe there's a cake coming to the RBLR Sports office that we should dig into. So
where's that video? When you see the video of the guy eating some cake in the locker room for the franchise's birthday. But pretty cool, for the Lightning to continue. They're approaching their 30th season coming up soon as well. So that. Crazy to think that so many years ago people were like, hockey in the South? What? No. And then now we have 1,000 wins in franchise history, 3 Stanley Cups on a back-to-back run right now, looking for the 3rd. Just so thankful for hockey in the South. How about it?
It's so well, and I just remember, like, as the Bolts were posting pictures throughout the years and celebrating and everything like that, I just remember the height of this team's fandom right when we won our the first Stanley Cup, and then unfortunately the lows of the lockout. That like baseball's going through one of those right now. But then to see this franchise really dig into this community, and of course from Vinnick all the way down, to see where they sit as a franchise, as a premier franchise in the National Hockey League here in the South. Like you had mentioned, people might have scoffed at it, but we are a hockey town. We love our Lightning, and it is a place to be at Amalie Arena. So kudos to everyone throughout all of the years, the legends like Darren Pupa in the first couple of years, to all of the accolades and things that we have done, and the Hall of Famers that we have produced in this short time span. I mean, I don't know, we'd have to go onto a rabbit hole, but to see how successful we've been as a franchise versus other expansion teams.
Future off-season podcast coming soon, maybe?
I think that's a good idea. I think we could look at our first 1,000 games in 25 years and things like that versus other teams and what they had done outside of the original 6, because there were only 6 teams. So the Canadiens were able to get like 20,000 Stanley Cups with only 6 teams. But we got our 3 in 25, so we'll see what we can do for the next 25 years. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you to everybody for tuning into this podcast. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at RBLR and checking out all of our latest podcasts that we got, the Bucks, the Rays, the Rowdies, all that great stuff. But with that said, that's going to do it for us in this week's episode. Go Bolts.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.